Preparing this presentation allows to open our minds about how early years education works and how each country or province has its own frameworks that support the learning quality. It is our pleasure to show you today the Australian framework called Blogging Being and Become Early Years Learning Framework. Here are Mariana Paz and my person, Nelida Marquez, and we hope that you learned about this inclusive and professional framework. Enjoy.
This is Australia's first national early years learning framework for early childhood educators. The aim of this document is to extend and enrich children's learning from birth to 5 years and through the transition to school. The Council of Australian Governments has developed this framework to assist educators to provide young children with opportunities to maximize their potential and develop a foundation for future success in learning. In this way, the framework will contribute to realizing the Council of Australian Government's vision that all children have the best start in life to create a better future for themselves and for the nation. The framework draws on conclusive international evidence that early childhood is a vital period in children's learning and development. The framework forms the foundation for ensuring that children in all early childhood education and care settings experience quality teaching and learning. It has a specific emphasis on play-based learning and recognizes the importance of communication and language, including early literacy and numeracy, and social and emotional development. The framework has been designed for use by early childhood educators working in partnership with families, children's first and most influential educators. Fundamental to the framework is a view of children's lives as characterized by belonging, being, and becoming. From before birth, children are connected to family, community, culture, and place. Their earliest development and learning takes place through these relationships, particularly within families, who are children's first and most influential educators. As children participate in everyday life, they develop interests and construct their own identities and understandings of the world. Experiencing belonging, knowing where and with whom you belong, is integral to human existence. Children belong first to a family, a cultural group, a neighborhood, and a wider community. Belonging acknowledges children's interdependence with others and the basis of relationships and defining identities. In early childhood and throughout life, relationships are crucial to a sense of belonging. Belonging is central to being and becoming in that it shapes who children are and who they can become. Being recognizes the significance of the here and now in children's lives. It is about the present and them knowing themselves, building and maintaining relationships with others, engaging with life's joys and complexities, and meeting challenges in everyday life. The early childhood years are not solely preparation for the future, but also about the present. Children's identities, knowledge, understandings, capacities, skills, and relationships change during childhood. They are shaped by many different events and circumstances. Becoming reflects this process of rapid and significant change that occurs in the early years as young children learn and grow. It emphasizes learning to participate fully and actively in society.
Uh, Principles. First, I need to say that principals make sure the quality environment where children encouraged to explore, where they have opportunities to encounter rich learning experiences that nurture and expand their thinking, language, and physical and social development, and where their cultural identity development is supported. When we talk about the principles in this framework, we will place in this part of the diagram. Okay, this is a diagram that reflects the Australian framework in early years education when children's learning is in the middle, and one big piece in this framework is the principle. Okay, the first principles is about secure, respectful, and reciprocal relationships. Educators can assist children in developing the skills and understanding they need to interact positively with others. Educators also help children learn about their responsibilities to others, appreciate their connectedness and interdependence as learners, and value collaboration and teamwork. Okay, relationships again is a big piece in the education, in early childhood education, because create attachment, create a positive relationships that allow appropriate development. The second principle is about partnership with family. Learning outcomes are most likely to be achieved when early childhood educators work in partnership with families. Educators recognize that families are children's first and most influential teachers, and they create a welcoming environment where all children and families are respected and actively encouraged to collaborate with educators about curriculum decisions in order to ensure that learning experiences are mindfulness. The third principle is about high expectations and equality. Um, Early childhood educators who are committed to equality believe in all children's capacities to succeed regardless of diverse circumstances and abilities. Children's, Children progress well when their parents and educators hold high expectations for their achievement in learning, and educators recognize and respond to barriers to children's achieving educational success. The fourth is respect for diversity. And respecting diversity means within the curriculum valuing and reflecting the practices, values, and beliefs of families. Educators honor the story, cultures, languages, traditions, child rearing practices, and families' lifestyle choices. Educators value children's different capacities and abilities and respect differences in families' home life. It's very important, the respect for diversity. Okay, Australia, as no more than Canada, but Australia have a diversity population and include in this principle, when you read the document, include the indigenous children. Fifth principle is ongoing learning and reflective practice. Educators continually seek ways to build their professional knowledge and develop learning communities. Okay, when you talk about the learning in this framework, the learning is ongoing, not stop. Okay, um, the reflective practice is key to understand those uh, processes when learning not stop if no it's an ongoing process. Okay, and reflective practice is, as professionals, early childhood educators examine what happened in their settings and reflect on what they might change. It's very important, the reflective practice for the academical and developmental success in the child. Okay, now we will talk about theoretical foundations. In the documents, doesn't mention any theories in specific, okay? It's just mention theories that support the document, and more important, that the document is based in the result of research about the better way to facilitate the learning in early years. In many times in the beginning of the document, talk about the research. No mention specific research, but mention that many research result that the better way for children to learning is blah blah blah. It's a general um, comment by the document, uh, but mention research and theories support the framework. Okay, different theories about early childhood inform approaches to children's learning and development. Early childhood educators draw up upon a range of perspectives in their work, which may include these theories. Okay, the first theories that we will mention is developmental theories. These focus on describing and understanding the processes of change in children's learning and development over time. The social cultural theories refer the emphasize the central role that families and cultural groups play in the children's learning and the importance of respectful relationships, and provide insight into social and cultural context of learning and development. The social behaviorist theorist is mentioned because the document invite educators focus on the role of experiences in shaping children's behavior. Okay, in support how the children can self-regulate, self-control their behavior, and support from those theory the change in the behavior of the child. The critical theories invite early childhood educators to challenge assumptions about curriculum and consider how their decisions may affect children differently. And, and the last theory is about post-structuralist theory that offer insights into issues of power, equality, and social justice in early childhood settings. Also, we can mention some approach that this framework take into account. The first is about social pedagogical approach. I will not mention now nothing about this social pedagogical approach because in the part two or in this presentation I will talk about this approach. The second approach is high scope approach. I'm sorry, this is together. Okay, high scope approach. Um, and the high scope approach is the central belief of high school is that children construct their own learning by doing and being actively involved in working with materials, working with people, and develop ideas. Okay, and the principles of a high scope approach is active learning, personal initiative, consistency, genuine relationships, and appropriate curriculum. Curriculum flexible curriculum to support children learning. And the key of this framework is play-based learning. They take the play-based strategy is the base of the framework, okay? And play-based learning means children will be doing much of their learning through hand us in an exploratory play, okay? Play-based learning allows them to explore, discover, to negotiate, take risks, create meaning, and solve problems. And all those actions is important for developing literacy, numeracy, and social skills in the child. The next one, I can tell again this diagram, okay? We talk about the principles. We talk about how this child is supported by theories and approach, okay? Is a scientist mood. It's not an invention of the humanity, no, is a supported framework. And now we will talk about this part of the diagram, practice. Okay, practice is related with pedagogy. Pedagogy is a big another big piece in this framework. Why? Because if the educator want to be success in her in the process that he or she facilitate for children need to develop a professional practice. The pedagogy means how the basic is how teach how or what we are doing, how uh, we are teaching, how we are supporting the child. No? Then practices is relate to how we put our principles, the principles that mentioned uh, before, into action by working together with children, their families, and within our community. Okay, it's a very important idea how pedagogy can support the children's learning. Well, when educators establish respectful and caring relationships, building and nurturing relationships, curriculum decision making, okay, I evaluate the situation, I observe the child, and when I contrast the process of the child with the curriculum, to make, I need to take decisions, okay? And when the educator take decision based in the curriculum, and finally teaching and learning with the child and by the child, because it's a double process. It's not only the teacher support or teacher teach the child. Also, the educator need to learn from the child about how the child learn, how the child feel, what is his or her temperament. It's an active process, okay? And the professional practice need take into account these three ideas. Okay? Additional important idea about pedagogy is professional judgment. As teacher, we as teacher will make judgment, okay? But those judgments need to be professional, okay? And for education, okay, educators' professional judgment are central to their active role in facilitating children learning. In making professional judgment, educators need to take into account these aspects. Okay, first, professional knowledge and skills. Next, knowledge of children, families, and community. Awareness of how their beliefs and values impact on children's learning. And finally, personal styles, and past experience. If you put together those professional practice and professional judgment, you will develop appropriate pedagogy um, according to this framework that support the living child. Even the you can find in internet another document called Educators Guide for Educators and explain in a broad way about how educators can develop an appropriate pedagogy to support learning children.
The five learning outcomes are designed to capture the integrated and complex learning and development of all children across the birth to 5 age range. The outcomes are: children have a strong sense of identity. Children are connected with and contribute to their world. Children have a strong sense of well being. Children are confident and evolved learners, and children are effective communicators. When children have a strong sense of identity, they feel safe, secure, and supported. They develop their emerging autonomy, interdependence, resilience, and sense of agency. They develop knowledgeable and confident self identities, and they learn to interact in relation to others with care, empathy, and respect. When children are connected with and contribute to their world, they develop a sense of belonging to groups and communities and an understanding of the reciprocal rights and responsibilities necessary for active community participation. They respond to diversity with respect. They become aware of fairness, and they become socially responsible and show respect for the environment. When children have a strong sense of well being, they become strong in their social and emotional well being, and they take increasing responsibility for their own health and physical well being. Educators use different pedagogical practices to promote children's learning by adopting holistic approaches, being responsive to children, planning and implementing learning through play, intentional teaching, creating physical and social learning environments that have a positive impact on children's learning, valuing the cultural and social contexts of children and their families, providing for continuity in experiences and enabling children to have successful transitions, and assessing and monitoring children's learning to inform provision and to support children in achieving learning outcomes. When early childhood educators take a holistic approach, they pay attention to children's physical, personal, social, emotional, and spiritual well being, as well as cognitive aspects of learning. Educators are responsive to all children's strengths, abilities, and interests. They value and build on children's strengths, skills, and knowledge to ensure their motivation and engagement in learning. They respond to children's expertise, cultural traditions, and ways of knowing, the multiple languages spoken by some children, particularly Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children, and the strategies used by children with additional needs to negotiate their everyday lives. Early childhood educators plan and implement learning through play. They take on many roles in play with children and use a range of strategies to support learning. They engage in sustained shared conversations with children to extend their thinking. They provide a balance between child-led, child-initiated, and educator-supported learning. They create learning environments that encourage children to explore, solve problems, create, and construct. Educators work with young children to promote and model positive ways to relate to others. They actively support the inclusion of all children in play, help children to recognize when play is unfair, and offer constructive ways to build a caring, fair, and inclusive learning community. Educators who engage in intentional teaching recognize that learning occurs in social contexts and that interactions and conversations are vitally important for learning. They actively promote children's learning through worthwhile and challenging experiences and interactions that foster high-level thinking skills. They use strategies such as modeling and demonstrating, open questioning, speculating, explaining, engaging in shared thinking and problem-solving to extend children's thinking and learning. Educators create physical and social learning environments that have a positive impact on children's learning. Environments that support learning are vibrant and flexible spaces that are responsive to the interests and abilities of each child. Educators can encourage children and families to contribute ideas, interests, and questions to the learning environment. They can support engagement by allowing time for meaningful interactions, by providing a range of opportunities for individual and shared experiences, and by finding opportunities for children to go into and contribute to their local community. Educators who are culturally competent respect multiple cultural ways of knowing, seeing, and living, celebrate the benefits of diversity, and have an ability to understand and honor differences. Educators view culture in the context of family as central to children's sense of being and belonging, and to success in lifelong learning. Educators also seek to promote children's cultural competence. Children bring family and community ways of being, belonging, and becoming to their early childhood settings. By building on these experiences, educators help all children to feel secure, confident, and included, and to experience continuity in how to be and how to learn. In partnership with families, early childhood educators ensure that children have an active role in preparing for transitions. They assist children to understand these transitions, routines, and practices of the settings to which they are moving and to feel comfortable with the process of change. Assessment for children's learning refers to the process of planning, documenting, and evaluating children's learning. When taken in collaboration with families, this can help families to support children's learning and empower them to act on behalf of the children beyond the early childhood setting. When children are included in the assessment process, they can develop an understanding of themselves as learners and an understanding of how they learn best. It is the way we build genuine relationships and partnerships with families that underpins and enables children's learning to occur. Building genuine partnerships involves a commitment to respectful and reciprocal relationships and to supporting families as children's first and most influential teachers. Developing relationships and partnerships with all families, including Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander families, is integral to ongoing open and honest communication. Culturally competent educators acknowledge the diversity of communities and are inclusive of all family groups. This will ultimately impact on the well-being of children and families as a whole. When this partnership extends to the wider community, including other support professionals, well-being is strengthened further for all. When the major aspects of their lives intersect through strong connections and understandings, and these understandings are incorporated into planning for children's learning, children are much more likely to succeed and have a strong sense of belonging.
As any framework, the learning experience need to be evaluated, need to be assessed in order to prove that the outcomes is achieved. Okay. Then when we talk about assessment, assessment for children's learning refer to the process of recollect of gathering and analyzing information as evidence about what children know and can do and understand. Okay, it's part of an ongoing cycle that includes planning, documenting, and evaluating children's learning. No stop is a process that occurs uh, one, two, three times, many times, non-stop. All time teachers need to planning, documenting, and evaluating. Okay, the process in the assessment is first observation and learning experience, questioning about what children know, what children can do, and what children can understand. Feedback by the family, feedback by the community, and feedback by the own children too. Self-assessment is about the reflection, the practice, the pedagogy. My pedagogy was correct in this um, case with this child, or I need change my strategies in order to support in a better way the child. Okay. Per assessment is this the feedback by the staff, the others, the supervisors, the families. Okay, is a great way to understand if the uh, outgoing outcomes is correct or need to make arrangement to support in a better way the child. And the reflection is a big piece in this framework. It's very, very important. for learning education, um, encourage the reflection in the practice of the educator and reflections around what happened with the child during the process of learning. Okay? And what do we know? Okay, what to plan, what are children learning, and what children have learned. This is some questions that narrow the current direction when educators need or should assess the child. Okay, okay. Continue talk about the assessment. Which evaluation method is using this framework? First, as I mentioned, the assessment is an ongoing process, no stop. All time, each process, each learning experience need to be uh, assessed, and after that, planning, observe, documented, and finally assess. And finish this process, you again uh, start another process with a new experience, a learning experience, and continuing and on and on. It's an ongoing process, not stop. Okay. And in the framework, the document invited educators using all kind of documentation methods necessary to um, recollect the information about how the process of the children goes and collect, document, organize, synthesize, and interpret the information is a big piece in the assessment process. Is not just documentate and reflect in a report. It's more that to this situation is documented to organize the information, synthesize and interpret, reflects about the process of the early learning experience and how support the child to achieve the goals. Okay? Using the five, another situation is this one. Okay? Using the five learning outcomes is very important. You can see those five learning in this one. When Mariana talked about the imaging of the child, children have a strong sense of identity. All if each one is evaluated in the activities that educators plan, and I will show you how reflects in the learning stories the evaluation of those criteria. Okay, here, sorry, okay. And finally, one method used in this framework is learning story is very useful for show um, parents what happened with the child and how support the child, no? And I can show you this website or this link direct you one document. You can check many learning stories as examples of how Australian educators document their observation and assess the learning process of children. I will share with you this document because really is great. The document is called the Early Years Learning Framework in Action. Okay, and you can see here 91 pages with learning stories, photograph, pictures, experience, narrations about stories about the process or activities. It's very, very useful. I can show you some of them. Okay, this is the content. Okay, for example, the dancing queen. Then the educator explained what happened and documented with pictures, analyze of learning, what next, and make connections with the framework. Okay? Discovering the watching the same way, what happened, analyze of learning, what next, and linking to the framework. Observe here the linking is what the outcome number one. Children have a strong sense of identity. And the educator is right, okay? What is the connection between the outcome that expect the children will have and the activity or the experience living in this process? And this another learning stories is big with more words, more explanations. This learning story have a close um, link with the framework, close link with the outcomes, with the vision, belonging being the three principal themes, the three main themes of the diagram, belonging, being, and become, how the pedagogy is reflected in this activity, and what next, what is the next step to support the learning, the children's learning. And I want to show you this one. It's so, so nice. It's an Aboriginal cultural studies in kindergarten. And this is many activities of here, many activities that the educator plan with the children. And one is Aboriginal art at the center. Another is invite parents. I can show you in the ground, activities in the ground, activities with families and community, invite parents. In this case, when parents show the guitar typical of those Aboriginals, living Kauna Cultural Center, visit Aboriginal centers, when exhibit art, dream stories, or talk about how the Aboriginal lived in that era, and it's very interesting, no? Uh, it's a way to be inclusive with all cultures. And continue. It's a very interesting document that enrich the ideas that how educators can have a documentation of learning experience. Okay, about the second part in this presentation is talk about the social pedagogical tradition, because this framework is placed in this type of educational tradition. Okay, well, first, if we remember the explanation that teacher gave us about pre-primary tradition approach and this social pedagogical tradition, we remember that those explanations were related to the theorist Bennett, who studied the frameworks and approach in more than 20 countries related to the early childhood education. And he established two types of educational traditions, no? The pre-primary and this one social pedagogical. And Australian frameworks belong certainly to social pedagogical approach or social pedagogical tradition. Why? Well, um, many factors. First, the child is the center of the learning. Okay, the child, all actions around the child is direct to the how better support the learning experience in the child. Okay, the curriculum outcomes reflect diversity and flexibility. In the pre-primary tradition educational approach, um, the curriculum is not flexible. It's a general outcomes, and the evaluation is achieve or not achieve. In this social pedagogical tradition is flexible, and the framework Australia is a flexible curriculum too. Okay, the assessment is seen as process to collect information, analyze, and making decisions between teacher, child, parent to determine goals and outcomes. These three players, no, teacher, child, parent. This is a typical players in the social pedagogical tradition. And the framework of Australia have the importance of mention or emphasize during all document these three actors, how they will or they need to work together in order to achieve better outcomes. Okay. Another situations that show me that this framework is in a social pedagogical tradition is, for example, the teacher-child relationship is a relationship of collaborative in exploring ideas from children's interests and needs. Another characteristic is that the curriculum is flexible, okay, and is adapted local curriculums to the child families and with the community. It's a curriculum that can support the community interesting too. As this framework integrate families, creating a great team between educators, child, and family to achieve this success, and also foster social and emotional skills. It's not only academic skills. Emphasize the importance of social and emotional skills as well, and assess the process, not the result, because the learning is seen as an ongoing process. Okay, the learning is an ongoing process that not stop, and the educator need check constantly the process of the child. Then definitively is a social pedagogical tradition. Okay. About the continuum and transition, this framework framework is during childhood. Okay, children get a number of transitions. It's sure. Okay, some transitions are big. Okay, for example, beginning school or childcare or preschool for the first time. Okay? And some are smaller. For example, maybe moving between rooms in a large service or changing services. Okay, but transition offer opportunities and challenges. Okay, and as educator, our role is to support children and help them and make this transition as smoothly and swiftly as possible. Okay, this is the role of the educator. And when we talk about the transitions, uh, for example, a transition, okay, uh, make transitions when we move from home to early childhood settings, or from the baby room to the toddler room, or the toddler room to the kindergarten room, or the kindergarten room to the school. Okay, those examples uh, uh, are transitions when the children need to be supported by educators and by family also. For example, when there is a new addition in the family, okay, new baby, or loss a member of the family, okay, is a big transition too. And eh, the educator need to be attuned with what happened with the child. The child is not a number in the classroom. Ah, one, two, three, four, okay, seven, okay, 10, okay. No, 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 no. It's a unique child that have a history, that have a family, and transitions in this family and in this child is uh, is common. Okay, then the educator need to be attuned with what happened and one of how can I support the child. Okay.
There are some similarities and differences between the Ontarian and Australian pedagogical frameworks. In the Ontarian pedagogical framework, the name of the framework is How Does Learning Happen, and it was created in 2014. In the Australian pedagogical framework, the name of the framework is Being, Belonging, and Becoming, and it was created in 2009 but updated in 2019. In both frameworks, they include the children's families in the learning process, not just the educators. Some similarities between the frameworks include both frameworks are situated in the social pedagogical traditional type. In both frameworks, the relationships between the children, family, educators, and the community are very important for them to achieve their goals. They both consider the children's social emotional development in their decision making in regards to the curriculum. Both curriculums are flexible and can adapt to the children's and community's interests and needs. In both programs, the educator's approach supports children's transitions so the children can feel confident. Another similarity is that both frameworks support the Aboriginal curriculum to promote particular histories, cultures, languages, and traditions of their families and community. Culture is central to a child's individuality, identity, and sense of belonging and success in lifelong learning. In the Australian framework, we found some additional information that we thought was very interesting. First, we found out that the Australian Early Years Learning Framework is available in 12 languages other than English. We thought this was interesting because the How Does Learning Happen document is not translated in so many languages. Another very interesting thing we discovered was that Australia has a family guide where they explain what the framework consists of and how they can best support the child and their learning. And this guide is also available in 20 languages other than English.